These are some of the interview questions on SQL Server Cursor. What is cursor in SQL Server? A cursor is a database object that represents a result set and is used to manipulate data row by row. Define steps to use transact SQL Server. First we have to declare the cursor, then open the cursor, then fetch record row by row, close the cursor and deallocate the cursor. Explain the cursor type. Dynamic. It reflects changes happened on the table while scrolling through the rows. Define the cursor lock type. Three types of locks read only. This prevents any update on the table. Cursor optimization tips. Close cursor when it is not required. You should not forget to deallocate cursor after using it. What are the disadvantages and limitations of a cursor? Cursor requires a network round trip each time it fetches a record. This consumes network resources. Define scrollable cursor. You can use scroll to make cursor scrollable. Temporary table versus table variable. Table variable can be used in stored procedure, functions, and batches. So let's move back and check out some of the other questions. So cursors are database objects used to manipulate data in a set on a row by row basis. It acts just like a record set in ASP and Visual Basic. We can also fetch cursor rows and performs operation on the loop just like a looping mechanism and any other thing. I forgot to point out that they are very slow and not recommended in general. So cursors can be defined as a set of rows together through a pointer that identifies a cursor row. The syntax is declare cursor name, insensitive scroll cursor, for statement, for read only, update of column name. So cursor name is the name of the cursor. Insensitive, it is a cursor that makes a temporary copy of data. Scroll specifies to fetch all options, first, last, prior, next, absolute. Select statement that defines result set of a cursor. The keyword compute, compute by, for browse into a not allowed, read only. It prevents update made through cursor. The cursor cannot be referenced where current of clause is an update or delete statement. Update of column name. It defines update columns within the cursor. If of column name is specified, only the column listed allow modification. Then transact SQL extended syntax, local, global, forward only, static, dynamic, and so on. So this I explored and find out that this is from AdventureWorks 2008. So let's see what this is doing. I'm going to go to the SQL screen. So let's see at the syntax. Declare the variables for every attribute that we want to select. So declare vendor ID, vendor name, and message varchar. So we declared three types of variable using the declare statement. Declare the cursor. Declare vendor cursor, cursor for. Use the select statement. Select business entity ID, name from purchasing dot vendor where preferred status equal to 1, order by business ID. Open the cursor and fetch the contents in the same order as in the select statement. Open vendor cursor, fetch next from vendor cursor into vendor ID and vendor name. It is important to get first row before the while loop so that the loop condition will be satisfied to start with. We use fetch status built in TSQL which controls the exit condition. As we use the same fetch content, we have to use it previously. So while fetch status is equal to 0, begin print message product from vendor plus vendor name, print message, fetch next from vendor cursor into vendor ID, vendor name, and close vendor cursor and deallocate vendor cursor. Let's look at the same in the code. So we are using AdventureWork R2. Here we are declaring it. Here we are declaring the vendor cursor, cursor for. I use the select purchasing order to find out how it looks like. So if I select, if I run only this, I get business ID, account number, and so on. Then I select everything. Then I open the cursor, fetch from vendor cursor. We define vendor cursor here, which is this thing. Fetch from vendor cursor into vendor cursor and vendor name while fetch status. So we use this while to actually go from top to bottom. Begin print product from vendor, vendor name, and so on. So we are looping from top to down to actually find out the vendor name. Let me show you. So product from vendor, Australia, bike, product from vendor, and so on and so on and so on and so on and so on. So we are going through loop by loop and we are finding out product from vendor and we are giving the vendor name. So this is like a for loop in any other language. We have some other examples from cursor which uses AdventureWork. CodeMag is one of them. and .NET trick is another time. Let's look at uh, the code Mac. So cursors look like a shortcut to developer. When you have complex geometry, manipulate rows, the quickest way is to iterate, but it's slow, so be careful. And that's why I never used cursor and it was not recommended to me. The inevitability of iteration, many access must have been iterated in some fashion to prepare data. So there is a set based operation which is not cursor, we do that. Comparing iteration strategies, use adventure work, declare this, set a transaction ID, set at a transaction ID while transaction at 1. Now here we'll use the same loop using fast forward cursor, which is the most efficient way of transact SQL. So declare this cursor for and the select statement, open cursor, fetch cursor, while fetch equal to 0, fetch from next cursor into and this end. So let's see how this would look like. So this would be shifted to adventure work. I'm selecting it and running it. I think this transact name has been already created, so I need not declare it. So transaction ID, use and declare transaction ID, set transaction ID from this set transaction ID, declare transaction ID. Let me see if I can run from here where I am declaring the cursor and get the number. So must declare at the transaction ID. So if I run from here, I don't need to do it before because the transaction was automatically created. I don't know why there is no output, but anyways, the next thing is .NET Rec. Cursors are database objects to retrieve data from result set one row at a time instead of TSQL commands. Declare cursor, open, fetch, close, deallocate. So we declare cursor name, define the cursor scope, define cursor movement, basic types of cursor, for statement, and for update define columns that needs to be updated. Then we have a syntax to open the cursor, open global cursor name, syntax to fetch each cursor, fetch statement provides many options to retrieve rows from the cursor, next is default option, syntax to close the cursor, and syntax to deallocate the cursor. And here they are giving an example. They are creating a table and then they are saying that set count is equal to declare ID, declare this current employee cursor, static for, select, and this is the for statement. Then they are opening this cursor. If cursor rows is greater than 0, begin fetch next from cursor employee into ID name. While this print all of this and go to the end. So let's try to run this cursor. So this is the .NET trick. We already created the table. So all I have to do is select the round one and run, and you see the same output that they have shown to us. So this is a very simple example of again a cursor in the SQL.